about my latest book that was actually co-written with a good friend of mine, Nick Redfern, who lives in Arlington, Texas. It's called Monsters of Texas, and for you Oklahoma people, please don't be offended. I'm going to mix some little Oklahoma stuff as well, but obviously we share a lot of the same types of subject matter in terms of cryptozoology. Here you see on the book cover, there's a little smattering of everything in there. We have Bigfoot, the Chupacabra, Thunderbirds, and so forth. So I went one too many there. How do I back up? There we go. Okay. A lot of people like to romanticize cryptozoology, and they refer to me as a monster hunter. And I think that's essentially because, you know, cryptozoology is a frontier science. The word cryptozoology actually means hidden animals. So essentially we're looking for evidence of unclassified, unverified animal species or creatures. However, a lot of these, of course, are legendary beasts that have been, you know, spoken about in different folklores and mythologies around the world for centuries. And of course, the most famous of these are Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, the Chupacabra is very popular now, the Jersey Devil, and so forth, so Mothman. So a lot of these are kind of ingrained in popular culture, and of course we romanticize them as monsters because in many cases they do have very monstrous qualities, and are, you know, presumably if they exist, they are quite remarkable creatures. But, you know, there is a real science behind what I do, and essentially that involves going out into remote wilderness areas where there could be perhaps a habitat that would be sufficient to hide these types of creatures. So we go out, much like real zoologists, we go out in the field and we look for physical evidence, things that can be studied and analyzed and measured and classified, such as tracks and hair samples, droppings, and so forth, sign that these things are out there. Here I am in the little Central American country of Belize, which actually has two types of mystery hominids that are similar to Bigfoot, known as the Sisamite and Duende. So I've been very fortunate in my life to travel all over the world. My interest in cryptozoology and natural mysteries started when I was a very young boy. And I was very fortunate growing up. Of course, I had a sort of an epiphany or life-changing experience at a young age when I saw my first Bigfoot documentary. And like most young boys, this, you know, really was fascinating to me, the possibility that we could actually share our planet with these giant man-like beings. My mother was very adventurous and really encouraged my interest in cryptozoology, and she, you know, used to tell me about Bigfoot, the Mothman, and so forth. And she was also a travel agent, and she loved to travel around the world and would take me on these fabulous vacations. So here I am in the Amazon jungle at age 9 with a very primitive tribe known as the Yagla. And I remember getting scolded by our guide because I kept picking up tarantulas and poisonous insects and things. Because like most young boys, I thought bugs were cool and neat. And you know, I got to swim with piranhas and all kinds of cool things. So, you know, cryptozoology is a global phenomenon, and we have a lot of these different types of things that we investigate, and I'm going to refer to them as cryptids. That's what we refer to them in cryptozoology. Cryptids essentially means any type of unclassified or unverified creature that we're investigating or researching. And this is my partner in crime, at least on my latest book, Nick Redfern. As I mentioned, he lives in Arlington, Texas. He's actually British. He's a very well-known author, has written a number of best-selling books about UFOs, conspiracies, and cryptozoology. And you know, Nick and I obviously shared a common interest in the monsters of Texas. We both investigated different cases, and we thought we would just kind of throw them together and write this book, which is kind of a compendium of different types of mysteries around Texas. Here Nick is holding the alleged skull of a Chupacabra, and that's something we're going to talk about here as far as Texas version of the Chupacabra here in a second. Well, we're going to start with I think everyone's favorite is Bigfoot, right? Who doesn't love Bigfoot and the whole mystery behind that? Most people know of Bigfoot and Sasquatch, mostly from the Pacific Northwest. You know, of course, a lot of reports from Washington State, California, Oregon, British Columbia, and so forth, Alaska. However, surprisingly, we have a number of Bigfoot reports and sightings that are documented throughout the United States, and actually it's a global phenomenon. There are versions of Bigfoot or Bigfoot-type creatures that are reported around the world. Now, it might interest you to know that Oklahoma and Texas, both states rank in the top 10 states as far as the number of reports annually. I believe Texas is at number 8 and maybe Oklahoma is number 9 or something like that. But both states produce a good number of Bigfoot reports and activities. And from my own personal experiences, I've done a lot of research in both areas. And I also, of course, I'm contacted by a lot of people that have had experiences and reports and things that they can't explain. So whatever these things are, we seem to have something, some type of mystery hominid or primate that lives in Texas and Oklahoma. The history of creatures like Bigfoot dates back to the 1800s. In fact, in the 1830s, we find a very famous legend in Texas known as the Wild Man of the Navidad. And there was actually a settlement down on the lower Navidad River, which is in southeast Texas. And people in that area began to find these mysterious human-like footprints on the sandbars. And subsequently, they began to have sightings of these creatures that were very human-like, but apparently covered in hair. And of course, at that time, in the 1800s, the notion or the name Bigfoot and Sasquatch did not exist yet. So at that time, people referred to these creatures as wild men. And we can even go back further into, for example, European mythology, where we have beings known as wild men or sometimes as the green man. And